The pressure on President Cyril Ramaphosa is far from over, as the economic freedom fighters, through Treasurer General MALema, have once again demanded that Ramaphosa resign over the PHALA farm scandal. Maotwe says the president failed to report the robbery properly, and insists the EFF will continue holding him accountable until he leaves office.
I'm here to defend the Constitution, because if we don't have a Constitution defended against those who think they are powerful and they are untouchable, like Mr. Ramaphosa think he is, then we're going to have a banana republic. We'll never have a country. So we're here to protect our country from being taken to the dogs by Mr. Ramaphosa. He is the one who said he sold animals himself. He is the one who said the money was stolen. He is the one who was coordinating those moves with Namibia to trace the money and get the people who stole the money and. The impeachment committee is established by the court order from the Constitutional Court, the highest court in the land. Mr. Ramaphosa, if you remember, when the panel report was concluded, he approached the courts to file for the review of that report. And then when he realized that he has managed to amass enough a majority in parliament to vote down the report, he withdrew that review application after that. And then it is the EFF that said, no, the National Assembly acted irrationally, and therefore we seek intervention from the court to assist us to arrive at the conclusion that says this matter must be referred to the impeachment committee. The Concord agreed with us that indeed the National Assembly has acted irrationally. This matter should be brought to the impeachment committee. And they even agreed with us to say we need to remove that rule that says after the report is submitted, it must first be voted before it goes to the impeachment committee. Only now, when he realizes that he has lost that fight, which he thought was done and buried, now he wants to approach the court on agency. There is no merit in terms of the agency on this case. It does not meet any requirements of a matter that is urgent, because this matter, as I said, dates back from as far as 2020 and it surfaced in 2022. So it cannot be urgent. Even the review application, it cannot, there's no judge that is going to say this matter, the panel report is reviewable, because already the higher court has already made conclusions on it. So how do you go and seek relief from a lower court when the highest court in the land has already given a judgment? Mr. Ramaphosa, he should have been advised then that he must just resign and allow us to proceed without him, and he'll still enjoy the benefits of being a former president. But he dragged us to where we are now. There's no turning back. As a jig, we're going to remove him from office in defense of the constitution of the country, in defense of our country.
Let's talk about that resignation that you say that the president should have tendered back when this all surfaced. What do you make of the suggestion that that is where the president may be swaying towards, given that the chips may be stacked against him in this particular instance?
Mr. Ramaphosa should have resigned back then, not now. Even if he resigns today, the impeachment process is ongoing. We're going to drag him from his PHALA farm on pension and take back our benefits and strip him of even the former president's status. So nothing is going to help him at this point. He refused to take guidance. There were rumors that he had resigned, but he was lobbied not to submit the resignation letter. He made a big mistake there by listening to those people, because now he's in a mess and he's alone. That's why you even see the ANC itself now wanting to oppose us, who want to defend the constitution and who want to defend the country, because it's them who misled him into believing that this thing he can just vote it down and it will not go anywhere. The ANC is to blame. Even worse now, the former president Thabo Mbeki advised them and said, allow the businessman to deal with his business dealings and let him not drag the ANC into this mess. They refused once again to listen to counsel of the elders. So now they are being dragged by a businessman, and then they want to blame us. They can't blame us. We're members of parliament. We're there to hold the executive to account, but most importantly, we're there to defend our constitution and to defend our country.
Let's talk about the timing of this defense as well. Given the fact that in his papers, the president also says that the EFF waited a substantial amount of time before actually filing the application before the Constitutional Court. So there was the vote in the National Assembly in 2022. Of course, that he was successful in that. It didn't choose to adopt the Section 89 independent panel report, but the EFF waited until around 2024 to actually file that application. And now, some 3.5 years later, the matter is now before the courts yet again because of the EFF and the timing in which it chose to give effect to its constitutional obligation.
That matter was ventilated in the Concord. The 11 judges of the Concord, they lashed on us about that, and the matter was put to bed there. So it can't resurface now. If he is aggrieved, he must go back to the Concord to say, Concord, why did you listen to the EFF? And then we start all over again explaining. That matter was there. We explained why. We apologized where we felt that we need to apologize, and we gave reasons why we filed papers a year later. But that's immaterial. That is not going to change anything. We're here now. The impeachment committee has started its work. Mr. Ramaphosa must allow the impeachment committee to continue with its work so that we get to the bottom of what happened actually at PHALA and to get to know indeed if Mr. Ramaphosa has breached his oath of office. That's what we are seeking to do. If he has breached his oath of office, then he must be removed from office. That's as simple as that. But blaming the EFF on the timing, blaming everybody is not going to help him. He should blame himself and blame the people that advised him not to resign at the time. Right now, the ball is in the court of the impeachment committee and we're proceeding with our work.
Just one more time, Umpile, we were speaking about the arguments that has been advanced by the president in his papers, that this is just another mechanism that is being employed by his political adversaries, he labels you, to ensure that he is removed from office. How do you respond to that?
No, Mr. Ramaphosa removed himself from office by engaging in wrongdoing, which he can't blame it on us. We did not ask Mr. Ramaphosa to do business illegally and trade in dollars when he's a president presiding over a country that deals with rands. So he has transgressed a lot of laws in the country. SARS came out to say, no, we have not received any declarations from that. South African Reserve Bank says, we're not aware of any dollars that were declared with us. So he just contravened a lot of laws in the country. And he can't blame it on us. If he had a pure business that is declared properly, that has run its affairs legally and not unlawful, we wouldn't be where we are now. Dollars were stashed in the mattresses and in the couches and in the safes at PHALA farm. They were allegedly stolen, and Mr. Ramaphosa allegedly then connived with the president of Namibia to seek to retrieve those dollars from Namibia. The impeachment committee is seized with the work of checking all that, taking the work from the independent panel report because they were pressed for time. They had lots of documents to go through, and remember they conducted their investigation on paper. We are now going to be calling for witnesses to come and testify, and including Mr. Ramaphosa himself, to come and answer for himself, so that at the end of the day, the committee can come to a conclusion that indeed there was a wrongdoing. And from where we stand, there was wrongdoing, because all the institutions in this country that assist with dealing with this matter, like SARS, like South African Reserve Bank, have already said no, there hasn't been any declarations. So Mr. Ramaphosa is going to be impeached, he's going to be removed from office, screaming and kicking, but we're going to strip him of all his benefits and the status of being a former president.
Thank you. Arabile, that was Umphile Maotwe of the EFF, Treasurer General of the EFF, saying that the blame should not be on their doorstep as opposition parties because they are simply giving effect to their constitutional mandate, and that the president ought to cast his mind back to the events of 2020 because he says that his political adversaries are just employing another tactic to ensure that he is removed from office. Of course, we expect that that particular argument is also one that will be advanced when court kicks off at 10 a.m. Arabile.
If you look at the constitutional duty of Parliament then in Section 89, in resisting President Ramaphosa's attempt to interdict the impeachment process, I mean, how do you view it overall here as the process that, one that you, of course, blew the whistle on so many years ago now?
Morning, Arabile, including all of the viewers. The Section 89 process, it is more of a legal process in the sense that once a motion, a Section 89 motion has been put in play, it has to be thoroughly scrutinized by an independent panel of experts. And in this regard, it was experts in terms of the legal field. And when those experts found that there's a case to answer, it should have thoroughly went to an impeachment committee just like we have now. So the president can't then want to include politics in a legal process, because when you read his papers, his main contention with the proceeding of the impeachment process is that he's going to suffer irreparable harm once this process continues, and it is a process in which he is going to face scrutiny from his political adversaries. That is what he's arguing. However, when you look at the facts, the president can't claim to suffer harm from a process in which he claimed that he's been innocent and he's done everything by the book. Where can the harm come from scrutinizing a legal process or a lawful process from his side? The second thing is that when it comes to the processes of Parliament, you can't then have the courts wanting to stop Parliament from doing what Parliament is supposed to do, because constitutionally speaking, Parliament is mandated, is obligated to hold the president accountable. And this process achieves exactly that.
At the same time, ATM leader Vuyo Zungula has also intensified his criticism. Zungula accuses President Ramaphosa of politicizing the legal process by asking the courts to stop the Section 89 impeachment committee from continuing its work. That committee was established to examine whether the president has a case to answer over the PHALA scandal. Ramaphosa argues that the impeachment process should be suspended, while the courts review the legality of the PHALA report. But Zungula believes this is an attempt to delay accountability and weaken Parliament's oversight role. With both the EFF and ATM turning up the pressure, the PHALA controversy is once again dominating South Africa's political landscape. The big question now is whether the courts will side with the president or allow the impeachment process to move forward. What do you think? Should President Ramaphosa face the Section 89 process, or should the court review happen first? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more South African political updates.
Or rather, we'll also see the Western Cape High Court, where, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa's urgent bid to block Parliament's impeachment proceedings against him is also in keen focus. There, Ramaphosa argues that he'll suffer irreparable harm if the public inquiry into the 2020 PHALA farm theft goes ahead. Now, the impeachment process was revived after the Constitutional Court struck down the rule the National Assembly used to reject a report that found Ramaphosa had a prima facie case to answer to. So like Kodash, as I said, joining us then from the Western Cape ahead of those proceedings. And really, when one takes a look at what we have heard so far from President Cyril Ramaphosa, it's been contestations for the Section 89 impeachment committee to even continue to do its work. The committee, however, has continued to go about its business. And the president, of course, in the court of law, in the Western Cape High Court there, seeking to stop it.
That's correct, Arabile. And you'll remember that that is some of the contentions that have been made by opposition parties, as well as the impeachment committee, in seeking to oppose the president's application to temporarily halt the proceedings or the commencement of the impeachment hearings against him. And what they say is that essentially the president ought to have launched his urgent bid shortly after the 8th of May 2026. That is when the Constitutional Court delivered that landmark judgment that essentially set the scene or revived the impeachment process against the president following the 2022 adoption, or rather finding by a move by the National Assembly not to adopt the Section 89 independent panel report. And what the president essentially argues, and what he will argue before this Superior Court this morning, is that the threshold that was employed by the Section 89 independent panel was the incorrect one. You remember that this entire process is governed by Section 89 of the Constitution, which sets out the various instances, the 3 instances in which a sitting head of state may be impeached. But when you read that together with the rules of the National Assembly, Arabile, that is Rule 129A, that is the contention of the president, that essentially the finding of the independent panel that there was a prima facie case for which the president had to answer was the incorrect finding, because the threshold is different that would trigger the impeachment hearings against him. And so what he says is that when a notice of motion is filed by a member of parliament, that is where the prima facie case ought to be outlined by the member of the National Assembly, which is what we saw with Vuyo Zungula of the ATM when he filed that particular notice of motion before the National Assembly in 2022. And the president says that that threshold, the prima facie case, is what is prescribed in Rule 129A of the rules of the National Assembly. However, in the finding of the independent panel, rather, that there is a prima facie case, he says that that is the incorrect standard, because according to Rule 129G of the rules of the National Assembly, there ought to be sufficient evidence that would trigger the impeachment process against a sitting head of state. And therefore, the threshold that was employed by the independent panel was the incorrect one, in that they found that there was a prima facie case for which the president had to answer, instead of the sufficient evidence that would trigger impeachment hearings against him. That's just one of the aspects that also are the basis upon which the president will be arguing when the review application is heard in September. And really, Arabile, this is a high-stakes matter before the Superior Court this morning, because interim interdicts are not appealable in nature. They are generally not appealable. So should the president fail to satisfy or meet the threshold or the test for a legal interdict before this court, it means then that the proceedings of the impeachment committee will continue, also despite the fact that there is that outcome that will be anticipated before this very court as well, the review court in September. So we expect that various political parties will also be making their submissions against the submissions of the president. Those proceedings are expected to kick off at 10 a.m. Arabile.
10 a.m. is the time. We'll head on over to you then, Zoleka Qorasho, for this one. A high-stakes matter indeed is what we're getting out of the Western Cape High Court. President Cyril Ramaphosa seeking that interdict then against that Section 89 impeachment committee, and pretty much the terms of reference under which they will be operating.
Good evening, Pauli, and good evening to your listeners and the viewers of Newsroom. I just want to say categorically clear that Umkhonto Wesizwe Party rejects this ad hoc committee report, and we've made our input in today's meeting that this report for us is a political tool to protect the GNU.
And the basis of your rejection, if you can explain that further, that this is all a plot to protect the GNU, what does that mean exactly?
If you remember, Pauli, in our deliberations on the ad hoc committee, I'll give you one example. I was very clear, representing Umkhonto Wesizwe Party and the people of South Africa in the ad hoc committee about the issue of Major General Khan, that he must appear before us. That never happened because he was protected by parties like the ANC, the EFF, and partly the PA. Now, Umkhonto Wesizwe Party unequivocally rejects the ad hoc committee report into this allegation, which is relating to SARS governance and criminal infiltration as political sanitized document designed to shield the government of national unity. And its political principle and its senior state official for meaningful accountability. Because if us as Parliament, we are failing as well to protect our people in this country, I mean, people will lose hope about Parliament, because Parliament is the last defense of our people in this country.
Yeah. Let's look at individual...
And then, let me emphasize this, Toli.
Okay.
It's deeply concerning, before you come back, that, you know, this systematic governance collapse within SAPS was evident for everyone. As we speak now, Madlanga is sitting, you've seen a lot of things coming up, like some of those issues were deliberated in our ad hoc committee. Serious weaknesses in crime intelligence were detected. Procurement failures involving Medicaid 24 were detected. Evidence of informal political influence were detected. Failure in whistleblower protection were detected. And vulnerability to organized crime were detected.
So talk to us about the individual cases here. For example, we hear about Minister Mchunu. We also hear about the Deputy Commissioner, National Commissioner of the Police, Shadrack Sibiya. What do the findings say in respect of those two individuals, and do you agree with the findings thus far?
We reject, Toli, as I said earlier. If one looks at the findings on Mchunu, General Khan, Major General Khan, Minister Cele, Advocate Johnson, and Lieutenant General Sibiya, it's very clear that us as a committee, people who view us as shielding people who are clearly compromised in terms of public office. Parliament, we should set an example about accountability. And us as MK Party, we demanded that General Khan must appear before us. As I said earlier, that unfortunately, I was vilified. In fact, I was even called foolish. One now wonders why. It should have been not